Hello and welcome to another episode of Europe Climate Connection, a podcast dedicated to showcasing the incredible work of some of the member organisations of Climate Action Network Europe. I'm Rachel Rabbins, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Olivia Saxa.
Hi Rachel, it's great to be back. In this episode, we'll talk about the ongoing solar rooftop revolution. As you can imagine, with the ongoing race to end Europe's reliance on Russian fossil gas, many more people are now putting their trust in renewable energy as a way to solve the current fossil fuel crisis and mitigate the climate emergency. But this is far from enough, and in this episode, we will talk more about what is still needed.
Exactly. We should be asking ourselves, given the current energy and climate crises, how on earth do we not see every house and building covered in solar panels? Since the European Commission launched its Repower EU plan in May 2022, and with the European Rooftop Solar Initiative, the EU and national legislation is now trying to catch up. As of January 2023, there is now a European emergency regulation in place, which gives a further boost to smaller solar installations by easing permitting procedures.
In 2023, EU regulators will conclude an agreement on an EU-wide solar mandate for new public and new non-residential buildings, with phase-in dates for residential buildings, roofed car parks, and all buildings undergoing major renovation. Fresh analysis from energy think tank Ember also shows that European households massively invested in rooftop solar panels in 2022, adding 25 gigawatt. This is 8 gigawatt more than in 2021. So this really shows that people are already investing in the right direction.
Joining us today to tell us why a solar rooftop revolution is exactly what we need is Frances Kotz from Ecounion. Thank you so much for joining us. You've been working on accelerating the rooftop solar panel rollout and self-consumption for many years now, and a report that you just authored for Climate Action Network Europe contains country comparisons from across the European Union. It would also be great to hear how rooftop solar PV panels can be one of the important solutions to ensure energy security.
So, as you know, we're facing a big challenge related to climate change, so we have to use all tools that we have available at this moment. So solar rooftop is another tool that we need to use. As more solar we install in our rooftop, we will need to use less ground for solar and take it from biodiversity or agriculture uses. So it's important to try to move forward in this sense. So it's less conflictual space for this type of uses, and we need more energy, more renewable energy, of course. On the other hand, it's something easy for people because everybody, not everybody, but a lot of people have a rooftop. If they don't have a rooftop, they live in a building that has a common rooftop, so they can work with other neighbors to try to move to install solar panels. So it makes that a tool that it's accessible for most of the people to try to, that allows them to do something, move forward, and not stay at home just complaining about the politicians don't do what they have to do and what they are supposed to do. So I think that it's the right focus. And so if we focus on a rooftop, citizens will move on and we'll see more hope, and we will have more opportunities to face this enormous challenge that we need to face from all the fronts. Yeah.
Solar rooftop PV panels are super important for the energy transition and also a tool for people's empowerment. As part of the Repower EU package and the EU solar strategy, the EU is proposing to make it a requirement to have rooftop solar PV on all commercial and public buildings from 2027. And for new residential buildings from 2029. Do you think that goes far enough?
I think that any new building should be able to install this type of requirement, and since it's an obligation that it could start sooner, for any new type of building. That's one thing that it could probably be advanced. In any case, it's a positive thing to move to mandatory rooftop, and we saw that in the report with all the countries or regions that establish mandatory installment of solar in residential, commercial, or public buildings, so are moving forward. In the end, as I said before, we have to use all the available tools, and that's one very important one of them. So, but as I said, probably I would be more strict, and we can start before. No, any new building it could be compulsory to install solar panels for any new building going on in Europe right now.
Let's now turn to the benefits that solar rooftop PVs can bring to potential prosumers. Prosumers, people who produce and consume energy and have the opportunity to achieve their own energy sovereignty through self-consumption, while also decarbonizing their energy consumption. This, in theory, is incredibly empowering for citizens, but how does it work in practice? And what are some of the barriers or challenges we need to overcome to make this of a more realistic option and reality for communities?
Well, for example, the report we focused on different aspects, that things to improve in order that different countries can speed up this solar revolution. No? First, we need a good governance, so there has to be some goals, some type of strategy that detects the barriers, the obstacles, so that there has to be a country focus on that. No, so that's important. And governance, so including the opinion of different governmental levels, not only from the national perspective, but also regions, municipalities that have different powers. So that it's important to have this national approach. Of course, there have to be incentives. So solar is what we call a positive externality. So it's good for the country, it's good for the common good. So it can be incentivized, and there are different ways to incentivize it, feed-in tariff, but there are also grants, zero grant subsidies. So this is important too. And of course, the issue of permitting. No, and we also focus on the issue of permitting. So many people see this as a psychological barrier. And if they see that they have to face a long procedure, asking different administrations, and so on. So this poses another obstacle. So all these things have to be quite sorted out for each country, and try to detect which are the specific barriers in each country, try to solve them one by one. We have to focus on collective self-consumption too. So if I cannot install a solar panel in my roof because I don't have a roof, suppose because there's too much shade, so at least I should have some option. I could invest in a building solar panel, no? So that when collective self-consumption is allowed, or in a rural area, I could work together with some other farms close to my farm to install a solar and consume from that. So that we need to have these options available, so to be able to fully develop these strategies of solar. And finally, energy communities also are emerging right now, and that's also part of this collective self-consumption or energy sharing, so that it's like creating the framework so that we can work together and empower all of us towards installing rooftop solar panels in a way that it can be done not only for those people that have a house and a roof and that it's easy for them to install it, but also for the rest of the people. Also combining the public sector with the private sector, adopting different and new business models. So all this could favor this situation. Finally, there are also other types of psychological barriers related to, there are some myths that people still think that the solar panels may break my roof, or that they're not that good, or that they're not that cheap, or that, so there's still need for awareness campaigns that show people the benefits of solar, so that the regular citizen sees that it's a good option, that they will save money, that they will protect the environment, and that it's going to be not that difficult to go forward in this direction.
And for those people who don't know, what do energy communities look like? What are they in practice?
Some people joining and putting together to sort out difficulties to to install their solar panels or do other type of energy, renewable energy activities. It's basically that. It's not only good for installed solar panels, also to learn about energy and to empower people. Then when they learn, they are empowered, and then they are more capable of moving forward, because at the end, that's one of the problems. So energy is a very complex sector. Nobody understands it. That who says it understands it doesn't understand it. In the end, it's about learning, and energy communities help a lot with regard to that.
Absolutely. I think that element of inclusivity is so important. And I think in order for the energy transition to be successful, it has to be inclusive. So how do we provide access to those people who can't afford the technology or perhaps are unable to deal with the bureaucracy? Maybe some people don't even own the roof of their building or simply don't have the space, like you say.
Yeah, exactly. So that's one of the main issues. To install solar panels, you need to invest, you need to have capital. So if you don't have capital, you need to find other type of solutions, grants, subsidies, loans, and low interest loans. But we have to make those tools available, and because otherwise we may increase the gap. No, there may be an energy gap too. Also, we have a digital gap. We have many gaps. No, so right now it's clear that it's a very profitable solution for most of the people to install solar panels. That's clear. And basically, when the price of electricity is growing so fast, and it's a commodity which is scarce, in the end, we have to be aware to not allow only rich people to have their solar panels and to solve the energy situation for them, and increase that gap with other people that are not able to do that because they don't have the capital. No, so that it's really important. How to do it? Well, basically we need governmental programs. Those governmental programs, subsidies, they should try to focus more on vulnerable people. So try to prioritize grants and subsidies to vulnerable people. And it's a work of, we have to do it together, no? In energy communities, with local councils. It's a job that we have to do together.
You are the main author of this Rooftop Solar PV Country Report produced by Can Europe. This report looked at the administrative, economical, political barriers to the uptake of residential rooftop solar PV. And in this report, you have some of these categories you mentioned earlier: governance, permitting, self-consumption, energy communities, etc. Overall, in Europe, what can still be improved, and what should our next steps be to get more progressive policies adopted?
Well, it's a multi-approach, so all of this has to be worked at the same time. The governance aspect is very important, because once you have this strategy, this identification of which are the obstacles, how to face them, once you put together the different actors, then everything else is easier. Yeah. So probably the governance aspects are, it's like the framework that can help everything else to move forward. Because if you focus only on permitting, on improving permitting, which is very important because it speeds up the process, and the hope to have as soon as possible that panel, and then the psychological idea of buying those panels is easier. But if we don't have, it's difficult to solve this situation if we don't have all the actors inside, because there are municipal regulations, there are regional regulations, there are national regulations. So if you don't have this governance approach in which everybody is in there, it's going to be difficult to solve the permitting issue. So I wouldn't say that there's something more important than the other, but probably the governance issue, if you can focus that everybody assumes the importance of this change, and that would be the governance part. There is a strategy. The obstacles are clearly detected. The barriers are clearly detected. Everybody know what they have to do, and that's different in each country, because there are differences. So probably that could be the most important.
Maybe just taking governance, would you have one country that you would say does everything right, or at least is the best example of what it should look like?
I don't know if I have the courage to answer that question, but I'd say that, for example, Germany with the Eastern package is doing important changes right now. All the countries are doing important steps. Spain, Portugal, and Greece, all of them have sunny areas, and they are taking advantage of it. France, with collective self-consumption. Probably is the best example. The Eastern countries, Lithuania, are increasing their using incentives for people installing solar panels. So everybody is moving forward. But probably in terms of governance, for example, with the Eastern package, they have focused quite well the situation. In Spain, for example, there's also a roadmap on self-consumption, which has identified very well the obstacles.
Do you see countries following each other or following the good examples and good practices of other countries?
It's difficult to compare countries. Some of them use feed-in tariffs, some of them don't use it. The taxes regulations are different in all of the countries. It's really difficult that countries learn from each other. It's a very technical, everything is very technical and complex knowledge. So, but I think that, it's clear that there is, we could say, positive pressure for everybody to move forward. And countries are moving forward, I would say. And we can see an increase in solar panels installations, a clear increase in recent years, also because of the electricity price issue. That's clear, but also because there is a situation in which everybody knows that they have to move fast, not as fast as we would like, as everybody would like to, but governments are working. Of course, this is difficult. It's not easy.
No, absolutely. I think we could all do with a bit of positive pressure sometimes. So we've kind of looked at it from a governance perspective. And as you said, it's incredibly complex. But how about from a citizen's perspective? Can you give us some examples of some of the barriers that are maybe faced by citizens in those solar champion countries, for example, like Spain?
Yeah, sure. For example, in Spain, the regulation changed in 2019. Before of that, in Spain, we really had a very bad regulation that didn't incentivize solar, and it's working, advancing well. For example, distribution companies, suppliers, they still haven't got used to the new procedures, and there are lots of delays in supplying bills to customers. For example, some customers that have installed their solar panels, and they have huge delays in receiving their money back for the energy that they're selling to the grid. So there are lots of bottlenecks. There are also issues related to construction permits that still many parts of Spain have eliminated the need for construction permits for solar panels, but there are other parts that still have it. And it takes a long time, and this is another of the bottlenecks.
Now, we've spoken already about inequalities, with energy. I'd like to know a little bit more about the differences between the rural areas of the EU and the urban areas. I think quite often when I envisage solar panels, sometimes they are on apartment blocks. They're not necessarily in a rural setting. Can you tell us a bit about some of your findings from the report from that perspective?
You mentioned which are the barriers in Spain. For example, one barrier that I did not mention that question is that there's a limitation of 500 meters to do collective self-consumption or energy sharing. Yeah? So if you want to, together with the farm that it's next to you, to install some solar panels and use it together for your energy uses. So you can only do that if it's in a space of 500 meters, not farther away. So that works well in urban areas, and because so in a closed space we have many homes and buildings, but it doesn't work that well in rural areas. No, they have this additional obstacle. In the case of Spain, that's specific for Spain. In France, for example, they have a 2-kilometer distance, so it allows for more options in this sense. In Portugal, they do it more on a case-by-case basis. So I would say that rural areas, at some point, it's easier to install your own solar panels in your house because you don't have to ask permission to anybody. There are no house association, neighbors associations, and so on. So it's easier in this sense. But on the other hand, collective self-consumption, it's much more difficult, no? Of course, because you don't have access to that possibility.
Now, we've focused on governance a bit, and we've also clearly looked at citizens. But how about businesses? So Have companies been getting involved with this? Have they been, part of the discussions and having some of that positive pressure as well?
Well, yeah, I think that they're receiving that pressure, that positive pressure too. And they're seeing as well that the situation is, again, that the price of electricity is increasing. So reduce the vulnerability of the business to the electricity market, the wholesale market. It's a very positive decision for any business right now, no? And they can reduce that potential vulnerability to change of prices of the market through basically installing renewables, solar energy efficiency too, of course. That's the best possible option. Reduce energy expenses. But secondly, we have the renewable energies, and that's a way to reduce vulnerability. Many companies are seeing that they have to face an increase in energy costs that are really putting in risk their business. So it's totally a resilient strategy to move forward in this direction.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question. How do you convince those doubters, those people who are still reluctant as to, the importance of moving to renewable and the importance of moving to solar power?
Yeah, well, probably some time ago you had to appeal to altruistic motives but that's not the case right now. I think that it just something that it's positive for the business. It also gives, in all the terms, also corporate social responsibility, of course, but not primarily, also reduction of costs. So in all the senses, I don't think it's very difficult to convince them. Now it's just showing the numbers and that's it.
That's great. Yeah, numbers and data always speak for themselves, speak louder than words. Well, that brings us to the end of another episode of the Europe Climate Connection. Thanks so much for joining us, Francesc, and thanks to all of our listeners. We hope you can join us next time when we will be discussing what sufficiency is and why it matters. In the meantime, you can catch up with any of our past episodes via your favourite podcasting platform and learn more about our work at caneurope.org.
You've been listening to Europe Climate Connection, an original podcast presented by Can Europe. Europe Climate Connection is hosted by Olivia Saxer and Rachel Brabins. Samuel Martin Sosa is the executive producer and editor. Script by Rachel Brabins. Recorded and edited by Big Audio Media that also provided training, mentorship and assistance during the process.